Hi, it's Ava. Today we're going to talk about toxicity, toxic people, and really what happens when we're around them and when we let their toxicity build up on us or brush us. I'm going to use another prop because it seems to be working really well with everybody. Simple paintbrush, some black paint, and when you're around toxic people, their energies are, what can we say? Dark, right? We talk about dark people, we talk about dark situations. Usually that's a reflection of the people and the choices that they're making. Maybe they're making choices from a place of hate or blame or cruelty, unkindness, even ones, for example, in which they're not present. Somehow, if we feel that we're not being seen or heard, we can feel that that's toxic too. Abuse, for example, all those things are toxic. And we sort of feel them in our bodies, but we're not always conscious of what that looks like. So simple black plate, right? And to think of it, this is your skin. This is a simple paper plate. And so what happens when people, we encounter people that are toxic is they kind of brush this junk on us, especially if we don't have a really strong sort of energy system ourselves. And typically, like, this is like really, really toxic, right? Think of an oil spill and the birds that you see them pulling out of the water. They have to use like Dawn, like detergent soap, in order to go and get that toxicity off of those birds. That's kind of how it is with us. It's why we feel after we go to, say, a party or our mother's house, maybe our sister's house, maybe our brother's house, maybe our boyfriend's house, for example, or our girlfriend's house, that we need to take a shower, or our energy feels completely different. We feel like run down. Basically, we're coated in their goop, right? You get off the phone with someone and they've been drama. They've been complaining and bitching and all this stuff, and it's been all about them. Haven't asked how you are, haven't really been interested in hearing it. This is really what's all over you, right? And so let me go a step further. So when we're in toxic situations or have toxic relationships with people, there's a couple ways that we can go and help ourselves get away. So, as you know, I'm just going to use this as an example. This is like our brush, right? And so here's our skin. Well, this is kind of what happens, right? Is that it turns color. And we have to use a lot of water to get this to start diffusing. And you can tell I use so much paint that like this much water isn't going to do it. But you get the picture. Sometimes it takes, think of a family vacation or a holiday. How many holiday movies do we have in which people talk about the amount of drama that they like experienced, and then they have to come home and take another vacation? I personally remember how that used to feel. It did not feel so good at all. And so it's like, that's why I don't do toxicity anymore. I see toxicity and I'm just like, hey, peace and light, blessings and like joy for you, but I am not going to be engaged in that. So anyway, what you really want to do is you want to keep your like skin, your glass, looking like this. And when you have moments in which you've gotten people's junk on it, say it's at work, for example, that's a very common place for people. You go to work, for example, and somebody, either there's a colleague who's constantly negative, or, for example, maybe the work situation is difficult. There's discussions of layoffs. I remember being a part of that. It's gossip mills all over the place about what's going to happen, and really going to the workplace is really it's a really difficult sort of situation, because everybody is negative and everybody pretty much is brushing them like selves in some respects, and other people with all their junk. So what can we do in this situation? I'm just going to put this down because you can just see that going all over the place, which would be so funny. What do we do about that? So I talk about in Goddesses Don't Do Drama. There's sort of 3 steps, and if we're in a personal relationship, let's start there. There's a couple things that we can do. We can start to show up differently. So, for example, when someone who is, we'll just say, toxic, or who's exhibiting toxic behaviors that like energetically like kind of punch you in the gut, or feel like ew and yuck and oh, I just can't take anymore, like I'm done. All of those sort of pieces, that's when you know you're involved in a toxic sort of situation with someone. And you can start if, for example, you're still in that relationship. Maybe your husband's been having a hard time, or your marriage is having a hard time, or maybe you have a situation with one of your kids in which it's just like they're, in your perspective, exhibiting some behaviors that you would just wish that they wouldn't. Maybe they're, starting to lie to you, and like you don't quite know what to do with that. So what you can do is you can start showing up differently. And what does that mean? That means that you start basically deciding that you're not going to engage in that toxicity. So in moments, for example, where before you might have gone and picked up the phone when that one friend wants to call you and spew, you kind of set your watch on it, right? It's like after 5 o'clock, they're on the way home. It's the only time they talk to you, for example, and you know that they're just going to give you like that toxic dump. You don't pick up the phone. Maybe you text them later in a loving way and say like, hey, hope you had a really great day. I couldn't pick up the phone at that time, talk to you later. And sort of see how you feel about that. I remember having to make some of those distinctions with people that I was in like a close, intimate relationship with. It wasn't easy at the beginning, but I'll tell you, it actually ended up feeling liberating. And so that's one example. And you'll know in your own sort of situation what that would look like. How does showing up differently sort of look for you? Maybe it's not going and striking back and saying like, well, that's your fault. So maybe if you're engaging in a toxic sort of like language, maybe you sort of like pull back from that. And I talk a little bit more about other examples in Goddesses Don't Do Drama if you want to look up that for a resource. But second phrase, right, is having an honest conversation about the toxicity in the relationships that you're having right now. Sitting down with somebody that you really treasure, someone maybe who's a family member or a longtime friend. You don't want to walk away from the situation, and maybe you kind of are hoping that the things will shift, but they haven't shifted like enough. Maybe it's been 6 months of toxicity, and they've been just dumping on you. Maybe it's been a few years, maybe it's been your whole life, but you finally decide you're going to speak up. There's a voice right here up above, because speaking our truth is one of the most powerful things that we can do for ourselves in terms of sharing how we feel about something. Of course, owning our own feelings, being really present about how we feel and not putting that particular thing on them. So saying, I feel that when you call me, for example, or when we hang out, all you do is talk about, sort of things that are going on in your life. And I really would like it if we could have a mutual relationship in which you ask me about how I'm doing. Because I really care about you. And I think that would be one example, for example, of an honest conversation you could have to try to go and change that relationship from something that has become toxic. And then, of course, there's the outright ones in which it doesn't matter how much you do it, it doesn't matter how much water you pour into that dark glass, they just keep dipping that paintbrush back in that like black crap, and they just keep smearing it on you and everybody else around them. And that's when, if you have decided that it's time and you can't take anymore, that's when you walk away. And you bless them, you wish them, like I said, all the love in the world, but you just decide for yourself that you don't want to go and live like that anymore, because you want to be surrounded by happy, loving, kind, joyful people. And even if there's some hit and misses, for example, and some people have bad days, it means though that they're not like literally walking around with this paintbrush intent on smearing everybody and themselves with this black goo. And so those are some quick, easy things in terms of like getting toxicity, or sort of being more aware about how to handle toxicity, and some strategies that will hopefully help you transform those relationships, or basically transform the way in which you have created and are starting to manifest and attract more happy, loving people. Because honestly, you have to start basically saying, I'm not going to let you smear me with that stuff, and I'm not going to be around people that want to do that. That's one of the clearest, most loving things that you can do for yourself. People can make the choices that they want. They have free will, and you certainly can bless those choices, but you can decide that you want to go and have a different kind of life and different kinds of relationships. And so I hope that you choose to do that today. And if you're having trouble, like I said, check out more of my videos, maybe subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I've got lots more coming. Have a wonderful day.